friends, today we are going to compare two of the most strongest militaries after the United States and Russia. Do you know who are these two countries? On one hand, we have our country, India, and on the other hand, we have India's brutal enemy, China. And we are going to compare these two countries based on 13 different characteristics: manpower, tank fleet, armored fighting vehicles, self-propelled artillery, towed artillery, MLRSs meaning multiple launch rocket systems, air fleet, fighters, attack helicopters, navy fleet, aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, cruisers, corvettes and mine warfare craft. But I couldn't write over here, so I will explain to you the last few points. So let's see the population of India. India has a population of 1.31 billion, the second most in the world. Do you know who is the highest? That opportunity goes to China. China has a population of 1.38 billion. But by 2022, means 2022, India is going to have the highest population. So there's a border which is between India and China, which goes through the Himalayas, and its length is 2,167 miles. So let's start with the comparison. Let's go with manpower first. India has a manpower of active military personnel of 1.444 million, equaling to 10,444,000. Equaling. And China has even much higher active military personnel of 2,183,000 active military personnel. But China loses in reserve personnel. But China having only 510,000 versus India's 1.21 million. That means that in a conflict, Indian reservists will take longer to come up and immobilize to the front lines versus China. So there's going to be a lots of deaths in manpower for India. So we have to give this point to China. Even though it has less reserves, still it'll be easier for China to make more deaths in India than India to make more deaths in China. Now let's go to the second part. Tank fleet. India has a tank fleet of 4,400 tanks, equaling to 4,400. China has a less tank fleet of 3,800, equaling to 3,800. But that means India's tank fleet is not that strong. India has two main tanks, the Soviet-built T-72 and the Type 90, which is still has only less number of tanks, but even it has the future tank of Arjun Mk2 battle tank. But we are not going to discuss about the future, but we are only discussing about the present. So India's tank fleets are the T-72s and the Type 90s. China has a much better tanks with the Type 59 and the Type 99 and the Type 96. So these tanks would be deadly for India. But I wanted to tell you one thing. In the past, before the Cold War, India's T-72s could destroy the M1 Abrams of USA and the British Challengers. But now also we are not discussing in the past and the future. So let's get back onto present. So also China wins this point. So the China score is 2 versus India 0. Now let's go to armored fighting vehicles. Here there is a really big difference. India has about 6,704 armored fighting vehicles. About 6,704 armored fighting vehicles versus China's 33,000. So easily China also wins this point. Now let's go to self-propelled artillery. India has self-propelled artillery of just 235. And China has a much higher self-propelled artillery rate of 3,600. So China also wins this point. And let's go to towed artillery. India has about 4,060 towed artilleries versus China's 3,800. So finally India wins 1 point. So the score is 4 versus 1. Now let's go to multiple launch rocket systems. India has about 266 multiple launch rocket systems versus China's 2,650. That's much higher than United States of America's 1,366. China is only followed by Russia in rocket projectiles. So also China wins this point. And let's go to air fleet. India has an air fleet of 2,123 attack helicopters, transports and fighter jets. China has a much higher air fleet of 3,120. So again this point goes to China. Now let's go to fighters. India has about 506 fighters versus China's 900. So China also wins this point. Now let's go to attack helicopters. India has a really low attack helicopter rate of just 23. But in 2017 it was much worse at 15. But now it developed a little bit till 2023. But that is nothing compared to China's 281 attack helicopters. So there's going to be a lot of damage on attack helicopters of India's. So let's go finally to Navy fleet. China has a Navy fleet of 777 versus India's 285 only. So also this one goes to China. Now let's go to aircraft carriers. If we mix the future aircraft carriers and the present aircraft carriers, India has about just 1 aircraft carrier versus China 0. But there are another 2 more under construction, but China has no under construction. So this point will also go to India, because we are also discussing now here on the future, because aircraft carrier is one of the most important in Navy fleet. Let's go to destroyers. India has just 11 destroyers versus China's 36. So India has no way of winning. And last, we have submarines. This is the last point I'm going to write, and the next few lines I'm just going to tell you. So here, India is nothing compared to China. India has just about 16 submarines and only 7 being nuclear attack submarines. China has a much higher rate of submarines of 58. On those, 8 are nuclear attack submarines. So China gets 2 points because it has more nuclear attack submarines than India. So I'm starting with the explanation points. India has about 14 corvettes versus China's 23. China has 2 cruisers versus India 0. And finally, mine warfare craft. India has 3 versus China's 7. And amphibious assault ships. China has 2 versus India 0. So totally we have the tanks, but if we take only 2000 tanks on Indian border, only 2000 tanks on the Indian border, only 2000 tanks, and 66 multiple launch rocket systems, and about 100 self-propelled artillery, and about 2000 towed artillery, and about 1000 armored fighting vehicles, because India does not need to care that much on Pakistan attacks, so that, and Afghanistan attacks, because Afghanistan is not that powerful. So we take this over here, and then China, it borders almost 5 countries, so that's why it needs more tanks. So if we take, suppose here, instead of 3800 tanks, already Kazakhstan and Mongolia are not that strong. So if we take over here about 1000 tanks, less than India, but it's going to make up in rocket projectors. If we keep about only 600 rocket projectors over here, which is much higher than India's, then India is going to have a really bad conflict in rocket projectors. And now let's take self-propelled artillery. If China has about 3600, let's take suppose 1000. So there's going to be a deadly conflict between India's 100 self-propelled artillery versus China's 1000. So that's why there's going to be a deadly conflict between these two self-propelled artilleries. And in towed artillery, already India has a large amount of 3000, but China has only 3800. So they'll take about 2000. So there's going to be a deadly conflict between these two, but India is going to have the upper hand. And finally, armored fighting vehicles. Instead of only 1000 being here, China can easily, comfortably keep almost 1200 over here. So if we take with air attacks, India's Sukhoi Su-30s, Sukhoi Su-35s, Sukhoi Su-20s, and Hindustan Aeronautical Limited Haltages and its F-16s and F-35s would certainly be deadly, but India has not ordered any F-35s. So there's going to be about 700 Haltages, 200 Haltages if you take suppose, and about 100 F-16s, and also India's Su-30s about just 90, because most of them might be damaged by this time. Only Su-20s 90, and then finally Su-30s about Su-30s. If you take suppose 100, 10 if you take, or if you take 110, and finally Su-35s. India tried to buy it from Russia, but India did not have that much money to buy that many Su-35s. So we take China's Chengdu J-20 multi-role stealth fighter. And the Chengdu J-11 and the Chengdu J-31, which can be better than the F-35 Lightning II. So if we take about 200 of these Chengdu J-20s, only 2 dozen aircraft are there, so it will be 24 only. The Chengdu J11, it has almost 400. And if you take the Chengdu J31, it will be almost about 500. So, that almost 500 versus 999. There's going to be a deadly conflict between these two. But India's F-16s are super modern, so they can easily defeat this Chengdu J11. And we should not forget the India's Rafale, which are only 76. So easily the Chengdu J31 could defeat the Hulk Aegis and the Su-20s with ease. And the Chengdu J11, even if the F-16 would try to destroy it, the large fleet of 400 would easily dominate the F-16s. Even if they took just 101, easily the F-16 would be damaged. But if we take Rafale, easily we could even take just China's Chengdu J11 for just only 67, because already Rafales are not that great. Because even if they have nuclear droppers, still they are not that great. So even if the Chengdu J31 does not need anything, even if it needs to settle it, if you want, it could try to take over the India's 23 attack helicopters and the 100 patrol helicopters. Easily it could take down these two. If you take these attack helicopters better than these, only 23 of them would be destroyed out of 500. But if the Chengdu J31 challenges India's attack helicopters, India's attack helicopters would drop to 0. But even if there are 23, it would not be that much. Only 10 would be there. And instead of India's 500, only 200 are there. Because all of the tanks could not be in one place, because if the other country attacks, they need tanks to destroy their country also. So if we don't even need to take one single attack helicopter from China, but even if these two make a deadly conflict with the Chengdu J31s, we could add about 76 of China's normal patrol helicopters and a normal about 11 or 111 attack helicopters, or if you want to take it less, it could be about 100. Because China borders more countries than India, so that's why it needs less. So still it could easily destroy these attack helicopters, but we could drop, we have to take more patrol helicopters over here. So we could take about example 500. If you take example and about just 76 of attack helicopters, you will get the picture. And let's go back to naval fleet. But China, this is the China's South China Sea, and this is the Indian Ocean right here. So if the Indian Ocean is just right over here, Indian Ocean, China has to go through Taiwan, but if US is patrolling that place, China will have a hard time. But if it tries to manage without crossing Taiwan's border, if it goes through like this, Taiwanese naval fleet would seriously destroy, but they don't need to worry. But if USA is also patrolling the area over here, what do you think? USA would easily destroy. But if they go straight like this without crossing the Mariana Trench, because the Mariana Trench way, because USA is also heavily protected over there. So straight like this, China would go. But if Taiwan spots the Chinese Navy could go at full speed and start attacking over here. Meanwhile, while China just over here at Taiwan's place, India would already be ready with its ships over here. If China's ships were coming like this, China's ships. If you take suppose all the fleet, almost if you take about, instead of 777, if you just take about 200, you would take one aircraft carrier over here, about 17 submarines, about 20 destroyers, and then about only 10 corvettes, 100 patrol ships, and also 2 amphibious assault ships and 1 cruiser. And if India took its aircraft carrier from Kolkata, India's aircraft carrier INS Vikrant would already be ready to destroy China's aircraft carrier. But if India only had about 9 submarines, and about instead of 10 destroyers, only 6 destroyers, and only 10 corvettes instead of 14, and about nothing else would be there. But if they would use their patrol ships, they could take about only 76 of them. So this type of event, if you take, most likely China would be the upper hand. But if we take with allies, Russia would take less time and come to China and also store their air bases over there, and they would also start firing from the Himalayan mountain ranges. But then USA would take more time to come to India and start destroying. But if China was patrolling here only, it would have only little bit of the fleet would be here, because only Mexico can't even invade USA, or Canada can't invade USA. So instead of 490 fleet, USA front coming from here would just take about 100 of these here. If it has 20 aircraft carriers, Russia only has 1. So Indian Navy would be dealing with Chinese Navy, and American Navy would be dealing with Russian Navy. But if it was 2019, the Arctic ice would not melt that much. So if India was only fighting with China there, China would not have seen USA was coming. So USA could use all its fleet to almost all its fleet, about 200 of this fleet, to transport it over here, and about the other 290 they transport it here. If Russia manages to get out from the Arctic ice, you get the picture. So if we take also nuclear arms, India has about just 110 nuclear warheads and China's 290. But some people say that China has a total nuclear missiles of 3,000. These 3,000 are in the underground of China where nobody knows. USA has about 6,800 nukes. So 6,800 plus 110, and Russia has the highest, 7,000 last year, but now it has developed about 7,300. So 7,300 plus 3,000, 1,300. I mean 10,300. But if you take 6,800 plus 110, if you take 100, this would become about 6,900, and it would become about 6,910, the total nucleus. So only Russia would not need to use that much of its nukes on USA. If they have about 10,300, they could make about just keeping about only 6,900 nukes. It would be almost off their fleet. But if China takes another 10, it would become the same. But if these two decided to have a conflict of 6,910 plus 6,910, if you take it would be almost 13,820 nukes used.
Conclude, Saatvik, conclude.
So mostly the winner would be China, but the radiation of nuclear in Asia would lead to crop failure and would lead both of the countries to die. But I would say China would have the upper hand. Who would you say who would have the upper hand? If you want more military comparisons like this, smash the like button and subscribe my channel for more videos. Thank you.